feature presentation.
He'll be fire on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfro. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Senegal baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Very proudly presented each and every day by Motley Rice, motleyrice.com for causes, not just cases. You can find us on the JB and Goldwater app, and you can always head to jbandgoldwatershow.com as well to find all of our available platforms. Make sure you follow us on social media at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB, and at Darren Goldwater. The Share Healthcare chat lines are open. Aaron, Craig, Adam already in them. ShareHealthcare.com for affordable, more option, user-friendly healthcare. If you haven't heard about it, $149 a month is as low as you can go, and that is pretty low, kind of like the offense in this state at South Carolina and at Clemson. Share Healthcare chat lines, again, wide open. So pop us a note. Darren will pop it in the program like he's already done and make you a part of our fun over the next couple of hours. We'll be joined in those next 2 hours by Mike Morgan and Keith Allsep. Mike will be calling another ACC game coming up this week on ESPN2 Saturday. Not hoops, football, Duke and North Carolina. He had an ACC game this past Friday night. Wake Forest, who is still undefeated, by the way, one of two undefeateds. The other one's going to play Clemson this weekend. Will Clemson be defeated again and under 500? Some of those questions we'll talk to Mike about. Certainly circle through the SEC. It is a huge week in college football. Separation Saturday, as Darren has dubbed it, and a couple of those separating games will be played in the Southeastern Conference between undefeated teams. Certainly looking forward to that. We'll talk about all that stuff. Keith Allsep, he'll react to the Gamecocks loss and look ahead to the next three winnable football games for South Carolina. If they can, just run it a little bit, just a tad, who knows what could happen for South Carolina. All right, we got baseball tonight, Braves, Phillies. Darren, they're going to start a big series. This could be the playoff defining series for both organizations. We got some NFL to get to and so much more. So without further ado, good afternoon, my friend.
It is a good afternoon, and I'll say happy retirement to a very good friend of mine and a mentor and colleague of mine. Dean Stevens has announced his retirement after 31 years over at Channel 4. There is nobody currently that I know in the Lowcountry that's had more of a positive impact on the citizens of the Lowcountry. I find it hard to believe someone will come close to that in the future as well. What he's been able to do to find the good in people, to find the good in stories, and to share that, we need more of that in this world. I'm happy for Dean. I'm happy he's retired, and now I'm ready to see what he does next. I guarantee you he continues to help people.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. I am nowhere near as close to Dean Stevens as you, obviously, but have known him a long time. I would say my fondest memory, Darren, of Dean is when I was a kid, when I was the bat boy at the College of Charleston. He used to be the sports director before he stepped into the ink desk, and he would come sit in the dugout before games and chop it up with Ralph Civiteri. And I learned a lot of words back then between him and Ralph. But he's been doing a lot for a long time. He's a good man. He's got He's got great kids, and I know he's probably going to look forward to traveling and maybe going to watch the Astros and things like that. But it's going to be really strange not seeing Dean Stevens anymore on TV. He's one of those guys, you just you feel like you've known him forever, even if you haven't. I would say Rob Fowler is very similar. These guys who not only are they really good at what they do, Darren, but you've worked with Dean a long time. You also know that what he does is representative of who he is. He's the same person. Yeah.
I mean, and to that point, it was, I don't know, a few weeks ago, I'm on the phone with him. It was a Friday afternoon, so we had some game later that night. And he was asking if I needed anything. He was just at a gas station on his way to the game. And to your point of, everyone feels like they know you. While I'm on the phone with him, in the background, you could hear, "Hey, man, you that guy on the news?"
Yeah.
So that interrupts my conversation with him. And now he can turn around and be like, "No, I'm not," and this is what I'm doing. So
that's
congratulations. Right. Enjoy the Longhorns, who might be the best team in the Big 12.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. We'll talk a little bit about that certainly today. 843-321-8893 is our text line. Again, if you'd like to chat, plug it in wherever you may be, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, just like David and Adam are doing right now, and come be a part of our conversation. Before we get to football, though, Shane Beamer, by the way, his press conference today, we'll update you throughout that. We'll talk a lot about what he's saying with Keith Allsep, who will be ahead at 1:20 this afternoon. So I'm sure Shane's going to be peppered once again on the offensive line. We'll see how he responds. But before we get to all that, want to quickly give everybody an update in baseball, where things stand with the Braves and the Phillies starting that series tonight. In the American League, though, in the East, the Rays have already clinched it. In the Central, the White Sox have already clinched it. And out West, it's not clinched yet, but close for Houston. The Braves, of course, 2.5 up on Philly. Brewers have already clinched the Central, and out West, that's done. San Fran and LA are into the playoffs, but what's not done is who wins the division. Both of those teams over 100 wins. Amazing. Giants with 102 and the Dodgers with 100, 2 games back of San Fran at this point in time. So if the season ended today, the Cardinals would be in the playoffs as the other wild card team. Either San Fran or LA is going to be a wild card team out of the West. And then the Braves, of course, would win the East if the season ended today, but the season isn't ending today. And this 3-game series for Philly and Atlanta is probably going to tell you who wins the division. So the Braves take 2 of 3. That would mean that they would be 3.5 games up, Darren. And well, if they sweep, they'll be 5.5 games up. If they take 2 of 3,
it's over.
Sweep, it's over.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. If they take 2 of 3, it's almost over. It's almost over. So win the series, and you're more than likely going to the playoffs for Atlanta. And then out in the American League, the Yankees and the Red Sox right now are the top 2 wild card teams. And the Blue Jays are 1 game back, and the Mariners are a 1.5 games back. So pretty tight out there.
Fun stuff out there. I referenced yesterday, and I didn't have the exact number, the streak that the Cardinals have got going. And I brought up the Rockies, and it was 2007, and it was 21 of 22. And that was a number once they got to the World Series. By the time the World Series began that year, they had won 21 of their last 22 games. So they got red hot down the stretch. Forget what it was. It was like 14 of 15, and then 21 of 22. They lost in the World Series, but you get hot at the right time, like the Cardinals can carry you a long way. And carry the Braves a long way if they sweep the Phillies. I like the spot they're in. I like the spot you're in when it's not clinched in advance, that you still have to play well right before the playoffs. I liked it about the 2019 Nationals. It's very similar here for the Braves.
I agree. I agree with that. Yeah, you're having to go out there and get after it every day with your best guys. So I totally agree with that sentiment. All right, 12:09 on this Tuesday afternoon. Just a quick reminder, if nobody's looked at the calendar lately, there's only, after today, 2 more days in September, and then it's into October. Cool air obviously has entered football weather, we call it. Separation Saturday is what is around the corner. Probably include Friday in that, because Iowa's got to travel to Maryland on Friday evening, and they're 4-point favorites in College Park. The over-under in that game is 46. So Maryland, although they're not a traditional Big Ten team, except many folks in Vegas expecting a traditional Big Ten slugfest there. Remember, Talia Tungavailoa is the quarterback for the Terps. That would be the brother of Tua down in Miami. There's another sneaky game on Friday night, folks. BYU is at Utah State, and BYU is only a 7.5-point favorite in that game. So, careful. Utah State got beat this past weekend by Boise, but obviously somebody out there knows something we don't know, so we'll keep an eye on that. But elsewhere, though, we'll get to Carolina and Troy in a minute. We'll get to Boston College and Clemson in a little bit as well. As far as the rest of what we would call separation Saturday, you've got 8th-ranked Arkansas at Georgia. College game day is going to be there. That's a noon kick on ESPN. What a perfect setup for game day. They roll right into the ball game over there in Athens where the Dogs are, how about this, 18.5-point favorites. Dogs, Hogs. Sam Pittman is getting a lot of love. We'll see how well the Razorbacks can compete this week. Also at noon, it's a hell of a noon slate. Michigan is on the road at Wisconsin. The Badgers just 1-2 on the year. 14th ranked Wolverines 4-0, 1-0 in the Big Ten. And how about this? They're dogs. Wisconsin 2-point favorites at Camp Randall. Well, they'll be jumping around, maybe. Again, noon on Fox and the big noon kickoff coming up on Saturday. At 2:30, you've got Notre Dame hosting Cincinnati, and the Bearcats, 7th in the country, Darren, 2.5-point favorites inside of Notre Dame Stadium. A 7-9 top 10 matchup there. The Irish 4-0. They poured it on in the fourth quarter this past weekend against Wisconsin that gave them their second loss of the year. That's certainly one to keep an eye on. Bama and Ole Miss, both undefeated. CBS at 3:30. The Lane train is coming back to Bryant Denny. We'll see if he can be the first ever former Nick Saban assistant to beat him. And if he does, it'll be on his own turf. Bama over 2 touchdown favorites in the game. The over-under, wear a neck brace, 79.5. Expecting a lot of points offensively in this ball game here, Darren. Well,
40-40. I mean, that's the points you're looking at right there.
Yeah, there's Bama is going to have trouble with Ole Miss early in the game. And we'll obviously pick this game on Friday. I have a difficult time thinking they're going to have trouble with Ole Miss late in the game, though. I know that there's a lot of people questioning Bama, and that's what bothers me. You question Nick Saban, he finds a way to put that nail in the coffin pretty quick. So we'll see. We'll see. And I do like Matt Corral. I mean, this is the best player that Alabama is probably going to see this year. Maybe the Heisman leader.
Well, it's him and Bryce Young right now. They are currently, as of yesterday, I didn't look today, tied as the Heisman favorites in the Vegas odds. So you've got a game here of 2 undefeated SEC teams. Ole Miss wants to prove that maybe it's the second best team in the West, and you've got 2 quarterbacks playing on a massive stage. And if you want to go win the Heisman, big stages and big performances on those stages are imperative on your resume. So whoever wins this game has a leg up on the other one. Look, both could play great, but whoever wins this game comes out with a leg up.
Yeah, I would say so. And you know what? People are looking at those games I just mentioned, Arkansas and Georgia, Ole Miss and Bama. Wow, what a Saturday in the SEC. Has anybody paid attention to the night games yet? Anybody, did any of y'all realize that 10th ranked Florida's on the road at Kentucky this weekend?
Yep.
How about that? 10th ranked Florida on the road at Kentucky, ESPN at 6:00. Mississippi State, they're going to go to A&M. A&M's a 7-point favorite in that game, but clearly, guys, they've got problems on the offensive side of the football, and you never know if Mississippi State can explode. I like A&M defensively, and they're home, but they better be really, really careful, or they're going to be like Clemson going, I don't know what happened to us here a month into the season. And then, oh, by the way, later on that night at 9 on ESPN, Auburn and LSU will play down in Tiger Stadium in Death Valley, and LSU is a 3.5-point favorite. Auburn looking to make a statement. So it might be separation Saturday for a lot of elite. It's also statement Saturday for some of these programs who are trying to hang on.
Yeah, and it's true in the SEC. It's true in the ACC, where you've got Louisville with only 1 loss and Wake Forest, where you've got in the Big Ten Penn State, Indiana. You pointed out Iowa and Maryland. Maryland is undefeated somehow. Michigan and Wisconsin in the Big Ten as well. There are a lot of games out there this week that will tell you a lot about who these teams are and where they stand almost halfway through the season. Once we're through this week, we're almost at the halfway point. One more week. So this weekend says a lot. Next weekend is kind of part 2 of Separation Saturday. So kind of buckle up, because these next couple of weeks are a lot of fun. Multiple TVs necessary.
I absolutely. I know you generally do 3 or 4. You're going to need more than that coming up this weekend. Obviously, Penn State's going to host Indiana. I know you're excited about that one as well. But in addition to all that are 2 games we looked at as off the radar before the season started and thought, well, Boston College might be pretty good, but Clemson won't have any problem with them in Death Valley. And South Carolina certainly will beat Troy. I still believe both to be true, but it's with less confidence than at this point in time last week. Certainly, Clemson clearly has problems. Boston College kind of mirrors NC State and how they're going to approach this game and what they do well and what the Tigers are going to have to deal with. All of a sudden, South Carolina and Troy, yeah, Gamecocks should be fine. Should be. Troy's got a top 5 defense in yards allowed. Now, have they played the best teams in the country? No. But there's no reason for them to do anything from a playbook strategy any different than what's happened the last 4 weeks. Really, honestly. I mean, Carolina didn't even run the football against Eastern Illinois until like halfway through the 3rd quarter. So why would Troy do anything different? So there's a couple of games in the state of South Carolina this week, Darren, where both Clemson and South Carolina should be fine. But will they be?
Right. And it's a very legitimate question for both teams here. And there's no confidence in me either way for either team right now. The fact that Troy's defense has played as well as they have, let's toss out opponents here. It's a better team probably than ECU, certainly a better team than Eastern Illinois, but we throw that out the window. And this is a team in Carolina that's proven over and over that the offensive line and the offense in general have major problems to fix. So it's not going to be easy to fix them against Troy. That concerns me greatly. I wonder if Clemson's ever going to put it together, because the talent is still there. But I don't know. I'm not confident in saying that that's going to happen. I think it's a very dangerous game, and I think it's one of the more wild lines on the board that Clemson is a more than 2 touchdown favorite.
Yeah, is it still 16?
It was this morning.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I mean, you'd like to think at some point in time they're going to break out, but we're going to have to see it to believe it. It's certainly been a struggle, and the same thing with South Carolina. The over-under in that game is 44. Carolina opened as a 9-point favorite. It's down to 7. Shane's going to meet with the media in about an hour, Darren, and, you know, honestly, he's going to get a lot of questions, and I'm anxious to see how he deals with this. And I'm sure he'll be fine. But, you know, he's going to get a lot of the questions that he got last week and the week before and the week before that and the week before that. I mean, because it's the same problems. Mm-hmm. And they're not good problems. Perry said yesterday, look, if they can just get a little bit of a rhythm going, they're going to be okay. Because sometimes that's all it takes, just kicking it into gear. Same thing with Clemson. You know, you just kick it into gear, you get yourself figured out a little bit, and you start to kind of move along. And the next 3 games, the next 12 quarters for South Carolina are the best opportunity left on their schedule to do that. If you don't have it in order in the next couple of games, you're not going to get it in order magically in College Station or at home against Florida or on the road in Missouri or back home against Auburn or Clemson. I mean, you talk about being who you are. Yeah, you will be exactly who you are. Which will be with a bunch of L's in the loss column. So Gamecocks still going to have to lean on the defense, just like Clemson is. They're very similar, believe it or not. I know people might not want to believe that, but it's true. They're very similar. They have the same strengths, and they have a lot of the same weaknesses. And for South Carolina, I still think that. Here's the from a running standpoint, to be specific, and X's and O's, like we watched these guys do it last year and do it very well. So there's something in there, but the coaches got to figure out what it is. The problem is last year they were running the football really well when they couldn't throw it. And Luke Doty for the last couple of games has actually been fairly accurate. He's missed a couple of times, and I don't mean missed throws. He's missed wide open receivers. So he's got to, kind of continue to grow and get better there, but he's been pretty accurate. But it's not like they're not running the football and they're just one-dimensional because they're throwing it all around the yard. Yeah, they're not really doing anything. And they're not going to really be able to do anything until they can establish something on the ground. We've seen them do it before. I'd like to think it's in there to do it again, but obviously it just hadn't clicked.
I think what to expect from Beamer today, and I'm interested to see it for this reason. I think what to expect is a lot of the same answers, because what else can he really say? He's been saying there's miscommunication, not just him, everybody, essentially. They've been saying we got the players, we just got to execute better. They've been saying all of the things to protect the players without throwing anyone under the bus, which they shouldn't be doing. So there isn't really something he can say to be specific about how they're going to fix it, unless he comes out and says, you know what? After looking at the film, we've diagnosed X, Y, and Z, and schematically there will be changes. I'm not going to lay it out for you because I'm not going to give you my game plan, but schematically there could be some changes in how we do things. That would be notable because he hasn't said anything along those lines yet. It's all been miscommunication. We got to get better. These are fixable things. Okay. Like, I hear you. That's coach speak. That's what everyone's going to do. When it just piles on week after week after week, you want to hear something else. You want to see progress, right? I said this yesterday, nothing changes until you change something. You want to see that something is going to change other than we're going to work harder and we're just going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, I know that fans want to hear about wholesale changes. Depth charts out today. And I kind of tend to agree with Perry. You probably need to keep grinding the gears with what you're trying to accomplish instead of just halting everything and starting over, because that would just be a total disaster. It would be even worse. I know that people, you got to try something different. Yeah, well, sometimes when you try something different, it makes everything worse.
Well, tweaks, right? I'm not saying like wholesale.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying you said that.
Tweaks here and there. Like, what can we fix? What can we fix that can make this better other than let's just do what we're doing better?
Sure. No, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that you're saying that at all. I'm just saying, like, I've seen it out there. It's like, well, we just need to throw this playbook in the trash. Well, you can't do that. That's not possible. I mean, I'm a guy who's all for giving others an opportunity if they deserve the opportunity. I think to speak bluntly here, I think if fans had an opportunity to pepper the coaches with questions or to just tell them whatever's on their mind, I think you would hear from people like, hey, we've been watching guys like DeCarrion Joyner and Jalen Brooks for over 10 games and they just can't get it done. Yeah, like early in the year, Brooks made a hell of a play. Joyner's caught some passes. Key plays this past weekend, you gamble, you go for it on fourth down. It could have been executed. It just dropped the ball. Is that not enough to give the next guy a chance? One of the things that you can't compare, it's not fair to compare everything necessarily to what Steve Spurrier did at South Carolina, because the way his mind works is totally different. He can have a whole game plan, rip it up halfway through the first quarter and say, this is what I'm seeing, and this is all we're going to do the rest of the game, and it'll work because that's Steve Spurrier. But the one thing that Steve was never scared to do was give the next guy a chance. He always gave the next guy a chance. He'd say it publicly. Well, so-and-so's struggling. We got to give the next guy a chance, right? And, so maybe they just don't have anything else. I mean, there's been issue after issue after issue around here for a while. But I think that from a fan standpoint, giving somebody else a chance here and there, that might not it wouldn't heal any wounds, but it would certainly at least provide a little more insight as to exactly what's going on here.
Yeah, that's another parallel with Clemson and South Carolina, right? You've touched on the strengths are similar, the defense, the weakness is similar, the offensive line, finding a push, finding consistency. There's another similarity right there. Don't you just want to try someone else? Don't you just want to throw someone out there and give them a couple of plays just to see? I'm talking about DJ Uiagalelei right there. I mean, wouldn't it maybe be good for him to watch a couple plays? Wouldn't it maybe be worthwhile just to see? I mean, I know they see in practice. I'm sure DJ's far ahead of anyone behind him, like Tyson Pumashon. But still, you want to see something better than the product that's on the field, even if it's just to shake up the guys you eventually want in there.
Yeah. I'm looking at the Share Healthcare chat lines here. From Craig, the only way to get space to run is make them cover guys on the perimeter, go 4 and 5 wide. Some just try it. I mean, Craig, I hear you. We've been talking about this around here for a while. So you got to get these guys out in space, man. Aaron says use the dang tight ends, short intermediate passes, and over the middle. That will back some dudes off the line when we are getting 4 and 5 yards a pop going down the field. Clint, Brown needs to get more snaps ahead of Dak. He obviously representing Amari and Brown, transfer from Georgia Tech. Joyner often has trouble getting open, and he's not exactly been sure-handed either. And Brandon, we're not as far off as it seems. A missed block from an offensive lineman or a wide receiver here, missed hole by a back there, missed deep ball, drop pass, all seems to be in critical situations. And to kind of summarize, and we'll get a break here so we can get Mike Morgan in. Brandon, y'all are all, I like all those comments. Brandon, you're spot on. The issue on offense hasn't been one issue. It's been a lot of issues. And that's where people are like, well, no, wait a second here. We dropped the football. We miss blocks. We don't see guys who are open. We don't communicate well. We have running backs who don't hit open holes. They go wide when they should have cut inside. We're running inside zones when there's 9 guys in the box. I mean, you don't really have to be a football offensive genius to know that these are some of the problems just with the naked eye when you watch the game. And I think that's where a lot of people are getting frustrated is, okay, all right, like I saw this past weekend, a lot of the communication issues were buttoned up. They were calling the plays from the sideline. Sat there and rewatched the game. Good. Still dropping the football. Still got guys running the wrong routes. Still got missed blocks. I mean, there's a lot of issues. So
that's why I think you're going to hear more of the same today. You're going to hear we got to clean it up. Miscommunication. I think there's going to be a lot of the same today. That's my guess.
Yeah.
My guess.
Jamie, which, by the way, Jamie and I realized the other day our seats are very close to each other. How are we able to throw the ball pretty well in Georgia, but didn't seem to open it up as much against Kentucky? Well, Kentucky was drifting back. They run that 3-3-5, and oftentimes on Saturday they were bringing a 6 guy in there, and they were making you just keep it in front of them. That's all they were going to do. Dare you to beat us deep. Because Carolina did show against Georgia. They hit a couple deep balls. They hit a couple against East Carolina. They hit a couple against – like they're good to strike once or twice. Kentucky wasn't going to let it happen. Mm-hmm. They kept everything in front of them, and South Carolina had exactly one good touchdown drive in that game, just like the other 2 FBS opponents they've played in East Carolina and Georgia. Going to have to figure out how to have more than that. No doubt about it. All right, 12:29 Tuesday afternoon. It is time for a timeout. When we return, Mike Morgan with ESPN and the SEC Network joins us right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right, we take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Negative trade equity financed a new loan subject to lender approval.
People don't like to get stuck in traffic, stuck in the mud, stuck at work, and two others you probably don't think much about, stuck with a big medical bill or stuck with a healthcare program that doesn't fit who you are. Experience true medical freedom with Share Healthcare. More affordable, more options, user-friendly, and biblically sound. You can join right now. Explore a new way to show you care with Share Healthcare. Join us today at sharehealthcare.com. sharehealthcare.com.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
You hear me talk about Dog and Duck all the time, and there's no other place I'm going to watch my college and NFL than the Dog and Duck. They have 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. They have specials all football season long, like $12 pitchers of their own D2 brew, $5 pints of Sierra Nevada, weekly pick'em sheets with prizes, and the best wings in town, bar none. For all your football, college, and NFL, the Dog and Duck, Clements Ferry Road, Bell Hall, and Park West.
Motley Rice LLC is a law firm with international reach, but it hasn't lost its Carolina roots. The Motley Rice team fights every day for people harmed by products including asbestos and talc exposure, medical drugs and devices, and also catastrophic injuries and auto recalls, including dangerous Takata airbags. Motley Rice is headquartered in Mount Pleasant at 28 Bridgeside Boulevard. Visit motleyrice.com. Thank you, Motley Rice, for supporting the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show.
You're listening to the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online.
All right, 12:32. Welcome back on a Tuesday afternoon right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice, who fights hard for Americans every day who've been injured while traveling on a plane or a bus, or who have been harmed by medical drugs and devices, burdened by auto recalls like the Takata airbags, and more. Headquartered right here in the Palmetto State in the Low Country in Mount Pleasant, right there on Charleston Harbor. MotleyRice.com if you or someone you know has been impacted. Again, MotleyRice.com. Before we get Mike in here, here's some good news. Saturday Down South is reporting that it looks like Saturday Down South is reporting a report, of course, from Sports Illustrated that high-ranking college football leaders, amongst them, there is movement afoot to at least consider an adjustment to the targeting foul's most harsh individual punishment, the ejection. In fact, the NCAA's own coordinator of officials, Steve Shaw, who formerly is of the SEC, and a handful of commissioners, as well as athletic administrators and coaches, expect the rule to be examined this offseason. Maybe by next year, the hope is that the policy looks different. Yeah, hope so. It's been a rough start to 2021 with some of the calls that have been out there. All right, do we have Mike?
We do.
To the phone lines we go. Generally, we get to see his smiling face. Today, though, we just have to hear the great voice, which you'll hear again coming up Saturday as he calls Duke and North Carolina in football, not hoops. Mike Morgan, what's up, man?
How you doing, guys?
Well, I mean, you sound as devastated as we are. Did not have you up here on
sounded
screen.
very somber.
Well, I'm getting okay, it's gone now. I was getting a reverb, and I didn't want to hear my own voice multiple times in my ear, but it's gone now. We're good. Let me try that again. Hey, guys, how's it going?
Oh, man, it is awesome. The state of South Carolina is rocking with successful football programs this year.
Yeah, it's kind of like we're back in a time machine. Those first few years that I covered the rivalry, and I remember one year I came up with a thing on my station, and we just called it the Carolina Clemson Marathon. Mm-hmm. And what I did was I was doing the morning show at the time, and I said, why don't we do this instead of we do the morning show, and there was a guy named Kevin Cohen did the afternoon show. So we did 7 to 10, and he did 3 to 6. I said, why don't we call it the Carolina Clemson Marathon? And we go on at 7 a.m. all the way to 6 p.m. straight, no break for national programming. And we just call it the Carolina Clemson Marathon. And it was a great success. We had fun with it. But I remember one year we did it. Carolina was like 1-9, and Clemson was 3-7. And we're sitting here trying to get everybody excited about the game. And it was just one joke after another, and people calling it the toilet bowl and everything else. That was kind of the low point of that rivalry. And I'm not saying it's going to be that bad, but certainly, when you look at what this season is going to be for both these teams, I'm not going to call the Carolina season a disappointment. I mean, look, they were an underdog against Kentucky for a reason. Mm-hmm. This is still a rebuild situation. Clemson's a whole other different can of worms, because you're talking about a team that people thought were going to be in the playoff. We're not even out of September, and they've already been eliminated from such. So I think it's a different deal. And I wouldn't be so down on Carolina because you lost a game against a good Kentucky team. I think the more discouraging part is the lack of offense and the passing game really just sputtering. And where does it get better? Is it as simple as calling different plays? Is it as simple as some maturity for Luke Doty that clearly he's a guy that needs a lot of polish? Is the personnel such that they're just going to be dominated in SEC games against better competition? I don't know, but that's the part. It's kind of like last year. Ole Miss goes 5-5. They didn't have like a ton of landmark victories, but they scored a ton of points. So you didn't care that their defense was atrocious. You just knew they were fun to watch, and they went 5-5. Well, if you go 5-5, but you struggle to score points, it leaves a different taste in the fans' mouths. And right now, for Carolina fans, they're looking at an offense that struggles to score, and that is less attractive than a team that struggles to defend.
Yeah, Mike, you make some great points. I to kind of back up some of what you're saying there. The South Carolina defense is good, and they're going to continue to be pretty good throughout the season. And they're going to have some struggles here and there against some of the better opponents. Maybe later on down the stretch, the Tennessee matchup might not be a great matchup based on what Tennessee does through the air, but that's not who they have coming up next. They have Troy coming up next, and overall, with the exception of Georgia and JT Daniels hitting them big on a couple of big ones over there in Athens, they've been solid, and so that's the positive. But it's been kind of swept under the rug by the fan base, because last year they watched Kevin Harris run his way to the SEC rushing title in the regular season. Couldn't throw the football very well. Most thought that Colin Hill was essentially incompetent as a quarterback. And then this year they thought, well, the one thing that we know about the offense is we'll definitely be able to run the ball. It's basically the same offensive line returns except Sedarius Hutcherson, and all the running backs are back, and this is an even better room. And they've really, really, really struggled, to put it politely, in trying to run the football. So I think people see that and they think that, although at 2-2, they've regressed.
Well, the problem with the layout that you presented there is that everybody else knows that the strength of this team is running the football. So guess what they do? They do what Kentucky did. You stack the box and you say, you're not going to run all over us. We challenge Luke Doty and Luke Doty's receivers to beat us. And if they do, we can live with that, but we're not going to let you just gash us. And so that's what defenses have done. I mean, those coaches on the other side make a lot of money too. And they know that Carolina's limited in the passing game. And so they just make sure they take away as best they can the run. And look, they're good running backs. It's an offensive line that we thought would be good, but they're not good enough where if everybody in the building knows you're running, that they're just going to be able to continue to average 6-7 yards a carry. That's not what this team is.
Mike, if I know you haven't seen Troy. If I remember correctly, you've already had Tennessee this year, right? And
no, that was last year. I have not had Tennessee yet.
okay, all right. Well, you've seen them. You've seen the Vols. You've seen Vanderbilt. You got Troy coming up next. Troy defensively is pretty good. Let's all remember South Carolina's pretty good defensively as well. They're 2-2. So obviously this 3-game stretch here is, if you were expecting to be better than pretty much anybody was expecting you to be, which was at most 4 wins, this is the stretch where you prove that can be accomplished with still 8 games remaining on the schedule. Based on what you know about South Carolina and what you know about the Vols and the Commodores, and if you know anything about the Trojans that are coming up next here, what are your expectations for this 3-game slate that is in front of Gamecock football?
Go at least 2-1.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get 3-0, then that's cherry on the sundae. You can't lose to Vanderbilt. They're just bad. I don't know how else to say it. They're just flat out bad. I don't know as much about Troy this year, but I know one thing. That is a prideful program that is always prepared, that is not going to be in awe of their surroundings. Remember, they beat LSU a few years ago. They play SEC schools all the time. So they're not going to go in there and go, oh, my goodness, there's a bunch of loud fans here at Williams-Brice. I mean, they've been there, done that. But certainly that's a game you should win. I don't know about blowout. I don't know if this offense is capable right now just blowing anybody out, but it's a game you should win. Vandy's a game you should win. And then Tennessee is one of those swing games that is going to be interesting because they're starting to actually gain some momentum on their offensive side of the ball, despite the fact they lost so many people. The attrition for Tennessee over the last 12 months has been staggering. And then a lot of people still think the NCAA is going to lower the boom at some point. So they're a program that's really hard to be overly optimistic about, but yet anytime you get a new coach, there's a new enthusiasm, and that'll be Shane and Josh's first time going head to head, and it'll be a big game for both those programs.
All right, so you mentioned Tennessee, and they've got Missouri this week at noon on the SEC network. So Carolina fans, although the noon slate in college football this week is just outstanding, if you are tailgating, try to corral as many TVs as you can.
Corral. I see what you did there.
Yeah. Well, that's a 3:30 kick there with Ole Miss and Bama. But obviously everybody's talking about that one. Everybody's talking about Arkansas and Georgia. I get it. Those are the national level games that matter on that scale. But for the Gamecocks, Mike, Tennessee and Missouri matters. And then at 6:00 on ESPN, Florida at Kentucky matters, because you might actually get a little bit more of a measuring stick as to just how good the Wildcats are when the Gators come calling on the Commonwealth Saturday night.
Well, no, I have had Kentucky, so maybe that was the other team you were thinking about. And I think they're good. I don't think they're 10-win good like they were a few years ago. I think Florida's the better team. I think Florida wins that game. So if you're looking that far ahead, Florida's going to be a very difficult matchup, the most difficult game left on the schedule, because you don't have Alabama, and you don't have, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have A&M this year.
Yeah, they do.
So,
at A&M.
They do. Okay. Although I'm not sure how good A&M is right now. They've got offensive struggles. Maybe the better team to avoid would be Arkansas out of the West. But, not to mention Ole Miss. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be an interesting game, but I think Florida's the better. I think what you saw with Florida, Alabama, is that the gap is not as wide with that program as opposed to the others. And we saw that in Atlanta a year ago. And then Dan Mullen, who for my money is as good a play caller as there is, he has to completely change his play calling with a pocket passer in Trask to a guy in Emory Jones who is clearly more of a running guy that's still learning how to be an effective passer. And I mean, in a lot of ways, they haven't missed a beat. And there's no more Kyle Pitts at tight end. There's no more Kadarius Toney. But so I think that's still the most difficult game left on the schedule.
It's a heck of a week in the SEC. I mentioned those other ones, Mike, and you also have Auburn on the road in Death Valley at 9:00 Saturday night on ESPN. ESPN has a hell of a slate of games coming up on Saturday. That's going to be something to watch. Yeah.
I know it. Yeah, a lot of good matchups, and I what I've gotten from coaches this year and our meetings and Zoom calls and everything else is that this year, unlike any other, and I don't like cliches because too often they're used incorrectly and they're regurgitated and people just throw out things like, I'll tell you what, there's never been more parity in college football. I'll tell you what, anybody can win March Madness this year, anybody. And it's normally just a line of crap. It's just, it doesn't, you feel like you're sounding smart when you say it. And in reality, it's just not true. Well, this year, the X factor has been COVID. The super seniors, 5th year, 6th year, 7th year guys that stayed around and have so much valuable experience. And so what you're seeing is there are more upsets than normal. There is more parity than normal. It's not unlike in basketball where the team with the most McDonald's All-Americans often doesn't win it because they lose to teams that have juniors and seniors in the starting lineup as opposed to a bunch of one and dones. There's some of that has trickled to college football this year because of last year's COVID epidemic. And so, when you look at it, once you get past Alabama and Georgia, I don't think there is a great team in college football. I think that's it. I think there's a good gap after we get past those two. And so you're going to see a lot of what are deemed upsets that in reality, I don't think are really major upsets.
12:47 Tuesday afternoon. Mike Morgan, ESPN and the SEC Network. All right, so let's hop leagues here. Let's go from the Southeastern Conference to the Atlantic Coast Conference. Mike, you had Wake Forest and Virginia on Friday night. I was watching that game up in Columbia. As always, nice call. Well done. Tip of the cap to you.
Am I allowed to say something? I can't remember.
That'll count. I mean, the question with the phrase, it counts.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
20-point win, Mike, for Wake. And Sam Hartman, who played at Oceanside Collegiate Academy down here in Mount Pleasant. They're one of 2 undefeateds left in the league. The other is Boston College, whom we're going to get to in a minute. They're going to head to Clemson this weekend and try to put the Tigers under 500 for the first time in, God, I don't even know how long. Maybe 10 or 12 years. But Wake Forest, how good is Wake Forest? They've got Louisville coming up on Saturday with a chance to go 3-0 in the ACC, 5-0 overall.
Well, first of all, they're really well coached, and secondly, they are the poster child for everything I just talked about. They have a bunch of guys that have been there 4 or 5 years, a bunch of guys that would have had to have graduated, but because of COVID, they got an extra year, and then they have a bunch of good players that aren't good enough to leave early for the NFL. So they have that sweet spot formula where because they're a developmental program, they don't get a lot of blue chip guys, but they keep them in school. And then you give them an extra year with COVID. And so those are grown men going up there, and they're just machine-like the way they do it. I knew they were going to score on Virginia. I didn't expect them to be that dominant because Virginia's got, I think, an NFL quarterback in Brennan Armstrong. By the way, that's the frustrating part, I think, if you're Carolina, and this is what Shane company will address in recruiting. You're watching all these programs now. North Carolina, who I have this weekend, you mentioned that obviously Howell's an NFL quarterback, probably a first rounder. You see like NFL guys at less than, not your typical like top 20 programs, but they're sprinkled throughout. It's about time Carolina's able to secure one of those, and then you watch how much better the offense looks when you have that. But for whatever reason, I mean, they just haven't had since Connor Shaw left. Dylan Thompson gave him some good run, but they haven't had a bunch of quality quarterback play, and that's the difference. I mean, you look at these ACC schools. There's a lot of them that, they're not going to be playing for a national championship, but they've got quarterbacks that keep you in every game. They've got really good quarterbacks in that league this year. And that's obviously the case with North Carolina as well, who's already, remember, they were preseason top 10. They've already lost 2 games. So they're right there with Clemson in the list of disappointments. But they've got a great quarterback. They lost their top 2 running backs, top 2 receivers, and their defense hasn't stopped anybody. So that's where they are. That's why they are where they are. But at least you can go out there and watch them, and their quarterback's going to put on a show because he's special.
I have a question about Wake Forest because I had never seen anything referencing the claw fence until an article, I don't know, I guess Saturday or Sunday, referencing they've won every game by 20-plus points. I'm guessing the claw fence is the offense, not the defense?
I got to be honest with you. I've never even heard that term, and I just did their game.
Okay, good. So I'm not the only one.
No, I don't know who came up with that, and we kind of dissected every milk and cranny of both those rosters, but I have not heard that moniker used.
Fair. Good. I don't feel bad anymore.
This stretch for Wake is very important, Mike. They got Louisville at Syracuse, at Army, Duke, and then the finish, that's where they're going to get their money's worth. If they can navigate the next 4 and, heck, maybe get out of there unscathed, guess what? You're on the road in Chapel Hill, which regardless of how good they're going to be at that point in time, is still going to be a tough test. You got NC State at home. You got to go to Clemson. You got to go to Boston College to finish the year for Wake. Speaking of BC, they got to go to the Upstate this weekend and take on the Tigers, who are really, really struggling. Boston College, Dabo said it today, presents some of the same issues that NC State presented. The Clemson offense is the worst in the ACC in every category, basically, Mike. It's been bad. Their defense is elite, but they got major injuries. They've got a young man who's quit. I don't know if anybody in that press corps up there today asked about E.J. Williams. Probably not, and that's a shame if they didn't, for spitting on those people in the field the other day. But what type of challenge is this for a struggling Tigers team? Although talented in other areas, they're really struggling, and Boston College is playing really well, undefeated.
Well, just looking at it from a Clemson standpoint, we knew the offense was questionable going in. They've been worse than that. They're just bad. And then, not to let DJ off the hook, he has not been an accomplished passer this year. Like he looks the part, and he's got a strong arm. But so much of football is not just seeing how hard you can throw it. You can throw it through a pane of glass, and that's great. But what's more important is that you're accurate hitting open receivers and finding those open windows. And he just hasn't been good at it. It really makes you appreciate what you had with Taj Boyd, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence. Those guys just didn't miss the kind of throws that DJ is. So those two things, I mean, and now, of course, you've got ridiculous season-ending injuries that are crippling for anybody. So when it rains, it pours, and it's a thunderstorm right now over Death Valley because nothing seems to be going right. And look, unless you're Alabama, what you're seeing happen at Clemson can happen to anybody. Oklahoma is not that good. They're winning games, but their star quarterback is barely. I mean, the fans are chanting for the backup. This was supposed to be a Heisman Trophy winner. Ohio State has not looked that good. Some of the teams that we thought we could hang our hats on every year have been disappointing thus far in college football. Let's throw Texas A&M on that list as well, as they got spanked by Arkansas. So, to me, there's only 2 great teams in college football this year. Everybody else is just scratching and clawing, trying to put it together the best they can. But at some point, it can happen to anybody, and it's happening to Clemson this year. I do get a kick out of people teeing off on Dabo, and I'm not talking about Gamecock fans because that's the nature of the rivalry. You're going to hate the other guy. I get that, but there's a lot of national people that are teeing off on Dabo, and I think a lot of it, just like Dan Mullen, and any coach doesn't fit their, let's just say, persuasion of life. The moment that they're down, they're going to take some pot shots at them. Dabo doesn't have to apologize to anybody for anything. He's won 2 national titles. He's turned a moribund program into a national power. So, like, if he has an off year, so what? Like, look, I think he's got enough equity in the bank based on what he's been able to do there.
And do you think as well that Clemson, so they're down, like we know, but the bounce back is probably significantly faster than another. I mean, if you're that high when you're down, the bounce back could be as early as next year.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if they have an O-line and DJ becomes as good as people think he can become, and they're healthy, then sure, they could be right back, win an ACC title next year and be in the playoff. I don't see a cataclysmic fall from grace that's going to, all of a sudden Clemson's going to be irrelevant. Like, I don't buy into that. I'm sure some people wouldn't mind that. And again, there's a lot of people from a personal standpoint that just don't like Dabo. But no, there's no reason to think that Clemson can't be back next year. But in terms of this year, they're extremely limited. Yeah. I don't think they're competing for a whole lot of stakes with that team this year.
It won't be as bad as Florida State, though. They're not good at all, Mike. That's
been a 6-7 year dumpster fire.
Yeah,
that's a whole other can of worms.
I know, Mike, you like to generally stay away from these things. I'm not asking you whether Mike Norvell deserves to be fired. I don't like having these conversations 2 and 3 years into guys' tenures. I really admire what Kentucky's done. But with Florida State has already shown the last couple of years, hey, if it ain't working, we're just gonna make a change around here. What is the best move for them? I mean, where are they? Are they a program that needs to?
I have some friends who are not only big fans, but like a couple are actually big donors, people that I went to middle school, high school with. And I will tell you this, first off, it's not Willie Taggart bad. I mean, Willie, bless his heart, had no idea what he was doing. They can't afford another coaching change. And I know that's hard for a lot of people to believe, but they can't afford to fire another coach 2 years in after what they've already lost in the Willie Taggart hire and buyout, the Norvell hire. There's just too much money that has fallen by the wayside. This is not Texas. This is Florida State. And on top of that, what's going to be accomplished? Like, who are you getting? Jimbo Fisher is not coming back. There's like not some hot name that is just dying to go to Florida State. The Deion Sanders rumors make me laugh. There's nothing. So in other words, I don't think anything's changing. I think they give them another year and they have to change the culture, because much like Texas at times, it's rotted out. It's just rotted out there. And if it was as simple as changing a coach, then Texas would be winning 11 games a year. Like there's just something in Tallahassee of late that it doesn't smell real good. And that was well before Mike Norvell ever stepped foot in Tallahassee.
Finally, Mike, North Carolina and Duke, you'll call this one on ESPN2 at noon on Saturday afternoon. Interesting stretch here for Duke. They just played Kansas. Now they get North Carolina. What is this, basketball season? Tar Heels.
And before that, they beat Northwestern.
And they beat, this is the Brain Bowls. I don't, I still don't feel like I know a lot about North Carolina. They're 2-2, third in the ACC right now by virtue of that record in the Coastal. 1-2, of course, in the league. They've had their struggles to start. Georgia Tech whipped them last week. Georgia Tech has proven that they're capable of playing some pretty good football here early in the year. So what do you make of this one as you're set to call it in a couple of days?
Well, I mean, first off, from our standpoint, from a television standpoint, we love rivalries. I don't care which one it is. I don't care what state it is, what the records are. I mean, it always makes for a more entertaining broadcast. There's a lot to chop up and have fun here with. You look at David Cutcliffe, and it's easy to forget. They hadn't won a bowl game in 55 years. He was the National Coach of the Year in 2013. 2 years later, they win the bowl game for the first time in over a half century. The guy's a flat-out perfect fit for Duke, but for the last couple of years, it has gone south. And it's so funny, like, to hear Duke football fans all of a sudden complain and say, well, we need to be better and fire David Cutcliffe. It's like, where were you before? Other than Steve Spurrier winning the ACC in 1989, what was Duke football before David Cutcliffe? They were atrociously bad. I think they won a span of 8 years where they won 10 games. Nice. And then Cutcliffe goes in there, and they're going to bowl games on the reg. They got a really good running back. And they always seem to, with Cutcliffe at the controls, they pass it pretty well. I don't know if either one of these teams are great defensively. So I'm looking forward to high scoring. I'm looking forward to both quarterbacks showing out. And Sam Howell is probably a first rounder and is special. So I'm just hoping it's going to be a lot of fun. I like day games, ready to get it kicked off at high noon and ready to go at it.
And after that, you've got a lot of football to watch, Mike. It's going to be a great day. Darren has called this Separation Saturday.
Part one.
Oh, I like that.
Part one. Next weekend can be part two. You can't. I coined it.
Oh.
All right. Well, I'm gonna use it and pretend that I came up with it.
Fair.
It's okay, Mike. We do that with everybody that comes on this show. We steal all of their information and act like it was our own, and we never credit the source. So totally understand.
Then you'll fit right in with many other talk shows around the
country. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the model. We follow a good model. Mike, safe travels. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much. We didn't get to see you, but at least we got to hear you, and they'll get to hear you again. ESPN 2 noon on Saturday. Duke and North Carolina on the call there. I got a feeling somehow y'all will mix in some hoops convo into that. So certainly looking forward to it.
Oh, it's quite possible. It is quite possible. And next week I'll be I'll be back on camera. I'll be Wando Power Equipment will give me some extra juice to get a signal down here. I'm actually down in Florida as we speak.
Oh,
and we'll make that happen.
All right. And I will petition. Darren and I will get this ball rolling here in just a minute to have you on the call in Knoxville for Tennessee and South Carolina.
I would love that. Believe me, that would be fantastic, and I would be all over that game. That's right in my wheelhouse. So
yeah,
I will second that emotion and hope that it happens.
Well, you got it, brother. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, guys, enjoyed it.
There you go, Mike Morgan, ESPN, the SEC Network, and this Saturday, part of the ACC as well. All right, late timeout. Got to hit it, though. An hour in the books, an hour to go. When we return, Shane Beamer will begin his press conference about 1:15. Keith Allsep will join us at about 1:20 as well. We'll dabble in the NFL, then we'll send you off to your Tuesday afternoon right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Right here in our backyard is Motley Rice LLC, a law firm that hasn't lost its Carolina roots. The Motley Rice team fights every day for South Carolinians who were injured while traveling by plane or bus, harmed by medical drugs and devices, or burdened by dangerous auto recalls, including Takata airbags. Motley Rice is headquartered in Mount Pleasant at 28 Bridgeside Boulevard. We are honored to have Motley Rice as a sponsor for the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
People don't like to get stuck in traffic, stuck in the mud, stuck at work, and to others you probably don't think much about, stuck with a big medical bill or stuck with a healthcare program that doesn't fit who you are. Experience true medical freedom with Share Healthcare. More affordable, more options, user-friendly, and biblically sound. You can join right now. Explore a new way to show you care with Share Healthcare. Join us today at sharehealthcare.com. Sharehealthcare.com.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the National Anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
All right, final hour, Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back. The JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice. You can get a hold of us on the Share Healthcare chat lines, just like all of you do every single day. Darren will make you a part of our program. It is Power Hour. You can rent at Wando Power Equipment in the Lowcountry here. WandoPower.com. Stump grinders, commercial zero-turn mowers, trenchers, sod cutters. Let me give everybody a little bit of advice here. If you've got an area of the lawn that the dogs have peed up or the kids have destroyed and you're like, I'll just wait till the spring, you better replace it now. Let me tell you why. Because I did the same thing last year. I'm just going to wait till the spring. And then it got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse. And in the middle of the winter, we had a mud pit. And I had to go put sod down in the winter. You know how long it takes roots to take?
A lot, yeah.
In the winter?
Did it over and over and tried to seed it. Then I ended up with sod. I'm well aware of how long it takes and how annoying it is and how I never want to do it again. Yeah.
It sucks. It sucks. So get the sod cutter, cut the crap out of there, go put new sod in before it starts getting cold. You can rent the sod cutter at Wando Power Equipment, where people come from everywhere. WandoPower.com. All right. So from my understanding here, just real quick nugget, we'll keep our eyes on it, is that the college football playoff committee hearing people, whoever they are, hope to have a framework for the future of this thing in by tomorrow, maybe. We could hear something by tomorrow as to what they're going to try to press forward with, and then by January, maybe try to have it all wrapped up. We'll see. But that's what they're saying. So
I think it'll be, if we've got something tomorrow, it'll be a very broad and generic type thing. Nothing. I don't think it's probably not going to be before 25. If it is, it certainly needs to happen virtually immediately. So I think the fact that they're close to a framework means that the whole back and forth with 12 team and 8 team and whatever they were discussing last week or 2 weeks ago, there isn't as much divisiveness in there as maybe some thought. So we're closer, but I think there's still a long way to go. I think what you'll see is an announcement of, here's what we want. And then we still got to get everyone on board. We still got to figure out how to make it happen. How many media partners are going to be involved? What's the Rose Bowl going to do? So we'll see. They're working on it. I guess that's good.
Yeah, that's good. We'll see. You're right. David, have we heard of hydro seating? I have not. Ask Wando if they rent those. This is going to come out really bad, and I don't want you to take this any other way. Why don't you ask them? You head to wandopower.com. Here's the number, 849-8814. Give them a call and ask them. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm actually trying to be more funny than anything. I have a lot on my plate, and that the point of us advertising, helping them advertise.
It'd be good if you called them and said, "Hey, I was watching JB and Goldwater, and they said I should call you." It's a lot better than JB and Goldwater calling them.
Yeah, I'd love to do errands for everybody that pays attention to us, but I don't have the time, buddy. I'm sorry. But if they have it, tell Polk to call me, and I'll put it into our reads, and we'll make sure everybody else knows they have it. If you are in the Low Country watching or listening to our program, listen very carefully. I'm being serious about this. Old Trooper Bob over there at ABC Channel 4 tweeted 15 minutes ago. So if I'm late to get dishing the news to you, I'm sorry. Turn around if you can. All lanes are blocked on I-26 westbound at the Jedburgh exit, which is 194. Once you get past Somerville, it's 5 miles past Somerville, is 199. There's a crash involving 2 tractor trailers and other vehicles.
Oh, God.
Fuel has spilled, and the coroner is headed to the scene. So it is a bad scene.
Oy.
And that, to me, sounds like it's going to be an all-day scene on 26 leaving Charleston. So if you're planning to go I-26 leaving Charleston,
don't,
or probably take 78. I would assume.
Don't. If you're going 26 West, don't, and then don't.
Yeah, this is God bless whoever's in the thick of this thing up there, but it's not good. So wanted to try to give everybody a heads up. All right, Shane Beamer has already stepped to the podium. He's a little bit early today. So we're going to keep you updated on what he has to say. Obviously, Carolina's got Troy coming up this weekend. Keith Allsep is ahead in about 10 minutes on our program, so we're certainly going to talk to him about what we've seen and what we might see moving forward with Gamecock football. Speaking of which, this is not something that we were able to get to yesterday with just so much on the agenda, but I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it today. Unfortunately, on Friday night, many of you have already heard that the University of South Carolina lost Ryan Fisher, a guy that I've known for a long time. He is a former equipment manager for both Carolina baseball and Gamecock football, very close with Coach Tanner, Coach Spurrier, Coach Chad Holbrook, now at the College of Charleston, and so many coaches and players that have come through South Carolina's athletics department, specifically in those two sports. Ryan, lost his battle with COVID, and he's been going through it for over a month, and it was a tough time for him. Liz, his wife, survives him, and they're expecting a child soon as well. Ryan's a great guy, and he's going to be really missed. And so if any of you would like to, there's a fund out there to try to help his family. I'll retweet it again today. If you follow us on social media, $5, $10, whatever, it'll all help the future of his family with their child on the way. So I think people would really appreciate that, and he's going to be missed. They did a memorial for him at Williams-Brice Stadium. He's a really good guy. Spent a lot of time with him at the regional this summer, Darren.
Yeah.
We talked a lot, and just catching up. He got out of athletics, and he was working for U.S. Brick. And he did that so he could have a life with his new family. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's over now. So God bless Ryan Fisher. He's a great guy, and I'm glad we could make sure that we mentioned that. Yeah. In the NFL last night, I'm not sure if you watched it. I bet our friend Bobby Harton is happy today. The Cowboys win by 20 points. So congratulations to Dallas, 2-1. So they're guaranteed at least a 2-15 record this year. That's awesome. And then the big story in the NFL is coming up this weekend. Tom Brady's going to make the trip back to Gillette Stadium. I'll be interested to see how he's received up there amongst the fans. I'm quite sure it'll be fine. I would hope it would be.
They better not boo Tom Brady. If they do, oh my, they got problems, man. I mean, real problems if you boo that guy when he comes back. Have you seen, and I hadn't until yesterday, someone started forwarding it around. There's an NFL promo of the game with Adele's song. The like, hello, how are you? Whatever that song is, it's a brilliantly done, like 30 or 60 second promo. You'll see it. If you haven't seen it yet, you will see it. Speaking of if you haven't seen it yet, so before we get Allsep in and we'll start talking about Beamer and we'll lighten the mood here a little bit. If you didn't see what happened at the Ryder Cup on Saturday afternoon, Justin Thomas, Daniel Berger played the morning session. We're not going to play the afternoon session. They walked to the tee just to hype up the crowd. You've seen all the crowds. You know how crazy it was out at Whistling Straits. So they just went out there to be cheerleaders to hype them up before the afternoon wave. And this happened. That's a beer. If you're not watching, they both have beers now. They were thrown to them.
Oh, that is good. That is too funny. Too funny. And it led to a victory, a dominating victory for American golf in the Ryder Cup. And in 2 years, you're going to do it again and again and again. It's not going to stop. That was really
I told you it was good.
really good stuff there. Yeah, I waited till you would play that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get a chance to see it. All right, Beamer with a couple little nuggets here on some injuries for South Carolina. Looks like Xavier Legette did practice today. Should be good to go on Saturday. Carlins Patel limited, but he's hopeful for Saturday as well. Carlins Patel has actually played pretty well thus far this year for South Carolina. Shane went on to say it's not coach speak when he says the Troy defense plays as hard as any defense he has ever seen, quote, ever seen. As for his team, they had a great practice this morning, and he is not happy, though, with last Saturday. So we will continue to update you on that. We're going to hit a timeout, 1:18 on this Tuesday afternoon. When we return, Keith Allsep, host of the Locked On The Gamecocks podcast, will join us right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice. Hopefully, you won't ever need legal help for a catastrophic injury or health issues from a medical drug or device. But if you or a loved one suffers injury or loss, Motley Rice LLC is a nationally recognized law firm that is right here in Mount Pleasant at 28 Ridgeside Boulevard. Thank you, Motley Rice, for sponsoring the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show. Visit motleyrice.com for more. motleyrice.com.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right, we take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Trade equity finance to new loan, subject to lender approval.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
You hear me talk about Dog and Duck all the time, and there's no other place I'm going to watch my college and NFL than the Dog and Duck. They have 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. They have specials all football season long, like $12 pitchers of their own D2 brew, $5 pints of Sierra Nevada, weekly pick'em sheets with prizes, and the best wings in town, bar none. For all your football, college, and NFL, the Dog and Duck, Clements Ferry Road, Bell Hall, and Park West. Okay, what's going on today, huh? Anything to talk about?
All right, greetings and a good Monday afternoon. Greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon. Greetings and a good Wednesday afternoon, and welcome aboard. All right, greetings and a good Thursday afternoon. Greetings and a good Friday afternoon, and welcome aboard. All right, 1:21 on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, StokesVW.com. JB, Darren, and Keith Allsep, host of the Locked On The Gamecocks podcast, joining us here. Shane Beamer, of course, is meeting with the media right now in Columbia, and any notable news that comes from that, we'll make sure to pass it along, and I'm sure we'll fuss and discuss. But first, one of the finest bald heads out there, Keith Allsep. What's up, man?
Well, God only made a few perfect heads. He covered the rest with hair. So great to be with you guys. Happy Tuesday. Returned back from the Palmetto State yesterday, and excited to be with you guys today. It was a great day on Saturday. Honestly, just a very humbling experience for me, the amount of people that I met, that I got to interact with. It was kind of overwhelming. And then, you had the game, which was also very humbling for Shane Beamer in South Carolina. I mean, honestly, guys, it looked like Kentucky was point shaving. I mean, the fix was in. They did everything they could to give that game to South Carolina. And South Carolina's offense refused to win the game. And, it's 3 games in a row. You got 1 offensive touchdown. And so I haven't broken it down for every game. Okay. But on Saturday night, South Carolina, who only had 12 first downs. And so until the last possession of the game, they ran on first down 9 times. One of those was a speed sweep, which is technically a pass, but it's really not a pass. And they passed 4 times. And they ran 7 times on second down. And as your previous guest, Mike Morgan, so eloquently said, Kentucky was determined 2 things were not going to happen. Josh Vann was not going to beat them deep, and South Carolina was not going to run the football if they had anything to say about it. And yet, possession after possession, time after time, come hell or high water, Marcus Satterfield said, we're running it up the middle.
Yeah. Well, but they didn't, though. That's the problem. They tried to run it up the middle.
Well, they did run it, but it was for very little.
Yeah.
Hey, 2nd and 9. Well, that worked so good. Let's do it again. Now it's 3rd and 7. Luke Doty. I mean, I was sitting with my best friend in section 4, and I looked at him and I was like, this has sack written all over it. And then the guy just comes from the backside untouched and annihilates Luke Doty. And I think that, clearly there's issues on offense. And it's still, Ja'Kai Moore started at left tackle, and, after one sack, he's doing like this with his hands up, like, what in the hell just happened? How, what happened here?
Yeah.
And, one time it's third down, you take out Kevin Harris and you put in Juju McDowell, and then you leave him one-on-one with those 6'4", 265-pound guys, and he just gets obliterated and your quarterback gets sacked.
Mm-hmm.
Second game in a row. How many times did they target Jaheim Bell?
Yeah. What, once? Twice, maybe?
All right, then you put in E.J. Jenkins after you get a holding penalty. It's 1st and 20. And you run a screen pass, and it's 2nd and 21.
Yep.
And so instead of throwing it up to a 6'8" guy, you run him on a shallow crossing route. 6'8". Well, let's run this guy like 6 yards on a shallow crossing route.
I think a lot of the frustration with Carolina fans, and we had kind of hit on this earlier, Darren, with Mike, and we certainly hit on it yesterday, is it's seemingly a multitude of things. I mean, they're that continue to be wrong. One of the things that I mentioned yesterday was a lot of it, not all of it, but there was a lot of communication that got cleaned up this weekend because they were making those adjustments from the sideline. But with that came even other issues. And, it's continued to be, I think, called basically, essentially a work in progress. And to pair that with the fact that the one thing that you were convinced of literally from the end of last year until the start of the season that you knew that you did well, you're not doing it well. So, people are, they have every right to be frustrated. I'm not telling anybody not to be frustrated. I was very frustrated watching a lot of that on Saturday night. It's mind numbing. And even Perry Orth mentioned yesterday, Keith, he doesn't exactly know who we are and what we're trying to accomplish out there. And that's where his biggest fear is moving forward is, well, what are you actually trying to do?
Strong takes today because we've seen 4 games. All right. And this is what you get with a first-time head coach is growing pains. This is what you get with a guy who's not called plays since 2015 is you get growing pains. And so here's my strong take is South Carolina really misses Mike Bobo. All right. And I'm going to tell you why. Last year, teams knew South Carolina, all they could do was run the football. It didn't take 10 games of an all-SEC schedule, okay? You didn't have East Carolina or Northern Illinois or Troy or anybody else. And Kevin Harris still led the SEC in rushing, and the better statistic is South Carolina led the SEC in yards before contact.
Yeah, great stat.
Okay, which is not only blocking, but it's formationing the defense to get what you want, and it's being able to call plays, and it's being able to make adjustments in game. That's what Mike Bobo, that was his value to the organization. All right, so Shane Beamer inherited Mike Bobo. He's the new CEO of this organization. And look, I'm not going to tell you it wasn't a Richard Cranium move by Mike Bobo right after he has his press conference with his new contract to come in and say, hey, I know I just signed this contract, but man, Auburn just made this big offer. Okay. All right. So as the CEO of the organization and arguably, really inarguably, Mike Bobo is probably the most important member of the organization you inherited. Can we agree on that?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, him and
all right, so
Mike Peterson.
So you have to do a cost benefit analysis for the short term and the long term of how valuable is this guy to my organization? What's the fallout if I let him go in the short term and the long term versus paying him what it takes to keep him in the organization? And so after 4 games where essentially you've gotten, other than Eastern Illinois, 1 offensive touchdown in every game, in the short-term analysis, Shane Beamer should have kept Mike Bobo. Now, over the long term, we don't know because it's only been a month. But the first month for Marcus Satterfield as a play caller ain't been very good. And South Carolina, as we all know, needed to be good in the first half of this schedule to win, and they let a game that by all accounts, they should have won that game. Kentucky's probably better than South Carolina, but when you get 3 turnovers to 0,
yeah, at home,
you got to win the game.
Yeah.
And South Carolina misses Mike Bobo right now. A year from now, will they miss him? We don't know. But look, college football is full of sharks. All these coaches are sharks. That's the bottom line.
I'm just glad you said sharks. I thought you were about to say something else.
And, you know, everybody's out for a money grab. And, you know, by all accounts, Shane Beamer didn't take time to think about it. He just said, well, Mike, I think, you know, Mike Bobo said, what do you think I should do? And he just said, I think you should take it. And now you got a guy who's growing into this position or trying to grow into it. And there's a difference between great football, knowledgeable football coaches and play callers. Okay. Now I'm gonna make an analogy here. All right. The great orchestra conductors, the great artists can do things that nobody else can do. You could be a guy in the orchestra that's the number 1 in the string, string section. And you could know how to play every instrument in the orchestra better than everybody else. But when the lights come down and the crowd is in there and you are playing, you know, Chopin or Tchaikovsky or whoever it is, that conductor can conduct that orchestra to move your emotions to a place that nobody else can do. And that's kind of what being a great play caller is like. It's not your knowledge or your ability to get on a chalkboard and draw it up and mesmerize people or to break down film and all this stuff. It's what happens when the lights go down and you raise up that, you know, little instrument to start conducting the orchestra. And then what happens if somebody, you know, for football, in-game adjustments is huge for a play caller. That's what made Steve Spurrier so great was you could be doing something he didn't even think about doing and hadn't done in 10 years, and he can watch a defense and figure out, well, no, we can't do that anymore. I'm going to do something I did in the 1996 Georgia game because this is the defense we're getting. And
yeah, that's what made Steve, obviously. So Steve would throw the playbook out in a hurry. The playbook was the playbook, and the game plan was the game plan. But he'd toss it out the window if he needed to. But we all know that it's so unfair to compare almost anybody to Steve Spurrier. Dan Mullen, probably one of those type guys. He can make an adjustment in the middle of a drive. And South Carolina doesn't have that in Marcus Satterfield. And for that matter, they didn't have it really in Mike Bobo. He could definitely make the adjustments, but not like that. Nobody can do it like that. There's only so many people, Keith. You know, the important thing moving forward for Carolina is how do they get better now, like starting this weekend, because this stretch here is what's going to truly, like there was always a very realistic possibility that after 4 games they could be 2-2, and at best, more than likely, at best, be 3-1. And I'd say at worst be 1-2. So they're right there in the middle at 2-2. And now you have 3 games that you can win all of them. Now, Tennessee's not a great match, but you can win it. And so I think where fans should shift their focus is, all right, well, we've seen much of the same for 4 straight weeks. It's the same thing. I mean, I've been listening to it today. I'm not hammering Coach Beamer. He's saying the same things. Own your responsibility. Own your this. Own your that. You need to do this better. We need to do that better. We've heard it all year. So, like, how are we actually going to see that? And if we don't see it, when would be a decent timeline to see it before there are major wholesale changes made?
I mean, honestly, to me, I thought Luke Doty looked the most comfortable when they were in tempo, when they were going faster, when they weren't huddling.
Not to interrupt you. I just want to get your thoughts on this. I mean, you're a football guy. I'm a little unsure of why we're not seeing more out of the shotgun with a guy who's got a foot injury, clearly. You're having to take the snap under center. I mean, I'm not trying to go in the doghouse here or be Debbie Downer. I just, if you got a foot injury, why make somebody take 5 and 7 step drops? Why not spread this thing out and just snap the football to him and give him the ability to read the defense from 7 yards back as opposed to taking it under center and something stupid happening? I don't know. I don't have that answer.
Well, I mean, to me, that is just another example of, you made that snap decision that Mike Bobo was not that valuable to the organization, and you were going to replace him, and you replaced him with a guy that can't come up with that. I don't understand how you through 4 games, even through 3 games, teams know what South Carolina is going to do. What's 9 out of 13? I mean, that's at least 75% of the time you are running on first down.
Yeah, about 70%. Yeah. Not 75, 70%, Keith. Come on. 9 of 12 is 75%.
But to be fair, so coming off last year and with the questions that we all knew, right, can anybody catch the ball being one of those questions, then whether or not the mindset is whatever it is of this staff, what identity they want to portray, that they're trying to, that you can't really tell right now other than we just want to run the football, you knew that teams are going to first and foremost say, prove to me you can put it in the air because you're not going to run it. And then what they've been able to do, defenses, is back off because the running game has been so bad that the Gamecocks are taking themselves out of that. And then the passing game isn't there on the back end because teams can defend that.
I mean, I thought Kentucky played 2 high safeties a good bit. And then they crowded everybody in there. And then, quite frankly, I thought South Carolina helped them formationally by bunching it up so much that you could almost have 11 guys in the box at times because it shrunk the field too much. Look, Skip Holtz back in 2000 after the disastrous 1999 season, they knew with Lou Holtz, if they were going to run the football, they had to spread people out to do it. You can't do it with 2 backs and 2 tight ends or bunch formations and having everybody in the box to start the play. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're Marcus Satterfield, you need to get Luke Doty in the shotgun more. Clearly, he's still not 100%. You could tell the few times he tried to run, he's kind of unsure, and he's not full speed, but that's still a lot faster than, Colonel Zebulon Nolan was on that one run against Georgia. But you got to spread teams out, and you got to get the ball to your playmakers. And I think E.J. Jenkins is a playmaker. He's been limited for a multitude of reasons. Jaheim Bell, 2nd week in a row. I mean, probably the worst thrown ball of the night, or the 2nd worst, by Luke Doty, was he kind of hung Jaheim Bell out to dry on that seam route down the sideline over the corner and under the safety, and he got he really got hit on that. And then you don't get it to him again. And, you know, you put Juju McDowell in, you get him kind of going on the perimeter a little bit, and good things happen. Then you get away from that. And I just think they got to go more up-tempo. They got to be more spread and more shotgun. And eventually, whenever Luke Doty's gets back to 100%, you got to incorporate more quarterback runs, because there were a few times on Saturday night, guys, they ran inside zone. And if he pulls that thing, he's off to the races.
Gone.
Because they were not respecting that at all, Kentucky's defense.
I totally agree. You know, and again, some of that, and I think Shane kind of hit on some of this already, that some of that is probably with his mobility right now. So, you know, but I don't know that answer. That's what the coaches are telling us. That's what we're going to have to go on. Let me ask you about this. So, you know, and I'm trying to be so fair about what I'm about to say here, because I see both sides of it, and I see accountability angles to this conversation on both sides. Let's talk about the 2 4th down calls, Keith, because the reality of all of this is, had they been able to convert one and score, with everything you said, could have won the game. All right. And they didn't convert them. So I'm going to leave the floor to you after I take about a minute to explain how I felt on Saturday, and how I feel about it now. So I thought in the first one on the 25, take the points. Okay. That was my first thought and it still is my thought. If you asked me today, make that call, I would take the points personally. Okay. Because you get points on the board. At that point in time, it becomes a 13-10 game. The crowd is into it. You play off of it, and you look to kick off, get another stop. Maybe you get a turnover, whatever it is, which they ended up getting another one. And you got a chance to win the game. All right. They didn't do it. They went on 4th down. Jalen Brooks dropped the football, and it was a good throw, and it was a pretty good play call. And he dropped it. Hit him right in the breadbasket, and he dropped it. Later on the 40, they go for it again instead of maybe pooching it down there. I certainly wouldn't have tried to kick a field goal from there. But I thought, well, try to pooch this sucker and pin him deep, and maybe you can get some big play by your defense. They've already been opportunistic. They chose to go for it. Luke missed Brooks running wide, slap open towards the corner of the end zone. He throws it to DeCarrion Joyner, who was at the sticks. Drops it again. So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to leave it to you. I personally, those two decisions, I would have done something different. Having said that, I respect what Shane was doing and trying to win the game, and his players have to catch the ball. Like, your job as a wide receiver, you have one simple job of all the things you do. Catch it. That's it. Catch it. Catch it. Catch it. So we can, like, I am second guessing the decision myself, but we can second guess the decision all day long. The fact of the matter is the calls were made, the plays were executed until the final part of the play, which is actually catching the ball, and the players let them down. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts on that as well. I feel like these are two examples, Keith, where we need to be open-minded and not just place blame on one end. All of it can, I think, is appropriate to be discussed.
All right, so I 100% agree on the first one. I would have kicked it. I said it at the time, sitting there 100%. Take the points. You get points. You get momentum. It's another sandstorm before the kickoff. The defense is playing well. That's, more momentum, more emotion for them to ride. Having said that, I did not think it was a great throw. I thought it was a low throw, but it still absolutely, as he was diving for it, it hit him right in the chest.
Yeah.
He should have caught it. The second one, number one, I have no idea why DeCarrion Joyner is still on the field at a critical moment in a game. And I also thought if he caught that ball, he would have been stopped short of the line to gain because he was not far enough down the field. And here's another issue I have is too many times throwing the ball short of the line to gain or throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage for basically nothing. And I would have definitely gone for the second one. I think simply because it was too long for a field goal. You'd gotten the turnover. Plus, it was only 4th and 3, I think. Maybe 3.5. I would have definitely gone for that. But I damn sure wouldn't have ran a play where DeCarrion Joyner was, the go-to guy at the stick. Mm-hmm. He just hadn't proven it. Yeah. Number one, he can't make a guy miss running sideways, and he doesn't always catch it. And, he's a great kid. Undoubtedly, he's a leader. Nobody works harder than him. But honestly, at this point in his career, you just have to say he's not good enough. And I don't know why. I mean, maybe it's because there is nobody else, but, man, I sure would like to see Amarian Brown in space with the ball. I sure would rather seen Juju McDowell in space with the ball.
Yeah, or Josh Vann, your best wide receiver.
Run that for Jaheim Bell. You know what? Because he's strong enough to break that tackle.
Right, yeah. Or throw it to Josh Vann, your best wide receiver. I mean, and that's another debatable part of this, right, is the play call itself. Because this is a hard conversation to have. Keith, I'm not a big beat up on the players all the time type thing. As a former athlete, look, 99% of the time, every one of these kids is literally doing the best that they can possibly do. But to your point, which I think is a perfectly fine point to make, look, we're in this age of NIL, right? Everybody wants to make money on their name and their image and their likeness, and everybody wants to have a Twitter account, and everybody wants to be loved on and this, that, and the other. You got to be prepared to take a little bit of criticism when you don't play well. And Aaron Joyner, I don't think there's a soul on earth that ain't pulling for him and Jalen Brooks, who's a great story, and many of these guys. And they've had some flashes. Jalen Brooks had the catch of the year last week. DeCarrion's had a couple nice games early on with 4 and 5 catches in a couple of them. But in crunch time, it ain't working. And so I don't know if you replace them. They're still on the top of the depth chart. But maybe they don't have anybody any better. But, you got to do – your job is to do your job, and they haven't done it thus far.
Well, I mean, look, it's like I said, I think Kentucky was hell-bent on saying we're not letting Josh Vann beat us, especially after he did beat them deep on the first possession, and Doty had to get rid of it and rushed it and overthrew him. That was really the worst throw of the day by Doty. I mean, and look, deep balls are not high percentage plays. Yeah. I thought Luke Doty played well enough for South Carolina to win the game.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I just still don't think, as a coach, your job is to figure out who are your best playmakers and be able to get them the ball. Even when the defense don't want to let you get them the ball, how do you do it? Vann was not very much of a factor at all in the game. To me, the next two guys that have proven they're playmakers in 2021 is Jaheim Bell and Juju McDowell, and they still didn't get it enough. Neither one of them.
Well,
we all know Kevin Harris is a great playmaker.
It's hard to be when there's 9 guys standing in front of you.
When you get the hell knocked out of you as soon as you touch it.
To your point, though, and again, I think Darren knows by now. I do everything I can to see both sides of everything that we can here with Gamecock football. But to your point, I said this to somebody yesterday while I was on the phone. Last year Carolina had all of Uno. One guy that could catch the ball, and it was Shi Smith. And every week, Mike Bobo found a way to get him the ball.
Yeah, that's right.
So, those are the things. Like, I respect the hell out of Mike Morgan, and I appreciate what he said earlier. But I do think fans have every right to be as frustrated as they've been because of lack of production, because there were only a couple of knowns coming into this season, and both of them have been a major failure. And there's really not much of a reason that they should be, with the exception of one. I'm not saying fire the coordinator or rip up the playbook or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I'm not a message board hero, but somebody's got to fix it. Someone's got to fix it. And how's it going to get fixed? We want to see it fixed.
I mean, again, I just think that, look, and we hadn't even said it at all, but man, South Carolina's defense, Kentucky didn't drop the ball. South Carolina knocked it out. Yeah. They are knocking the ball out. And yes, Kentucky had rushing yards. It was an adjustment. I kind of think the last 2 weeks, like at least the first drive or the first part of the game has been like, when you were a kid and you jumped into the water and it was a pool and it was a lot colder than you thought it was. It kind of takes your body a while to get adjusted, right? And then 10 or 15 minutes later, the water feels just fine because you've adjusted to it. But, when you first jump in, it kind of takes your breath away. I mean, all Seinfeld shrinkage references aside, I kind of think that first drive, that's what it's like. Hell, we saw that all the time with Ellis Johnson's defense. A lot of times it would take them one drive to get adjusted, and then they were locked in.
Yeah.
And I thought South Carolina's defense locked in after the first drive, and then really late in the game, they just gave out and knew the offense had no chance and, winning the game. And Kentucky got yards late, and they got yards early. But Clayton White and the defensive staff, I think there's a clear contrast with the experience level, outside of Stepp and Adkins. This is a very experienced defensive staff that has star coaches. Right. Clayton White coached in Power 5 at his alma mater at NC State. He could have gone to Oregon. He could have gone a lot of places from Western Kentucky. He chose to come to South Carolina because it's close to home. And I think he's really been, him and his defensive staff have been the story of the first month of the season for South Carolina, Georgia game aside, because they clearly dominated the opener. Other than the big play on the first play of the game, they dominated against East Carolina. And outside the first drive, they dominated against Kentucky, and they got 3 turnovers and really had 4 turnovers, and 2 guys were trying to pick one up at the same time and run with it, and they bobbled that one. South Carolina's defensive staff through the first 4 games has been absolutely lights out. Offensive staff, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, we've known for a while around here Mike Peterson was a star, and he continues to be. Jimmy Lindsey's really good. Clayton White's really good. And Torian Gray has proven his worth. Jalen Foster's an All-American right now, if anybody asks. It's amazing. All right, Keith, so this is still, I mean, this is just an unbelievable stretch here. It's an incredibly important stretch for South Carolina. You got to win at least 2, and obviously a perfect world, we all know what that means. You win them all. What do you envision starting with the Troy game for South Carolina football based on what we've seen? What do you envision moving forward? All of it and everything we've talked about, how it will start to come together this week, or much more of the same?
Well, I mean, I just don't think we know, because I think, a month into the season, when you're still searching for answers, and now there's 4 game films of your defense and your offense and your special teams, I mean, you got to be able to adjust quickly. You got to, one, for the offense, they got to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And you got to be able to make in-game adjustments, which, quite frankly, we really have not seen outside of the last drive against East Carolina, when they said, well, we run it inside every time for 56 minutes. Let's try outside and see if they can get that. Well, number one, you ain't beating Tennessee if all you can go up there and get one offensive touchdown, because up until Saturday in the second half against Florida, they're scoring points. Tennessee is scoring points.
Yeah.
Okay. South Carolina is not scoring points offensively. So that makes that very problematic going on the road to Neyland Stadium.
Yep.
Now, Troy, you better win. And Vanderbilt, I mean, good Lord.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're not good.
The SEC should exile them to the Patriot League and bring in somebody else, because Vanderbilt is like Division III.
They are bringing in somebody else, Oklahoma and Texas.
Well, I mean, get somebody else. Get Central Florida would be a better rivalry for everybody in the East than Vanderbilt.
Yeah. It's tough. But
Troy's defense, you better win those two, but guys, to me, that puts you on a trajectory to be 4-8, because the back half, you got to go to Missouri. Look at what Mike Bobo is doing with Bo Nix and at Auburn, what they're doing.
They benched him.
I know they did. And the other guy's playing better than him, who couldn't play at Kentucky. He couldn't play at Kentucky, but he can play at Auburn.
Talking about TJ Finley?
I'm sorry, LSU.
LSU. But he played pretty well against South Carolina at LSU.
Yes, he did.
Well, hell, you could have played well against last year's defense. Come on.
Oh, if you want to make a name for yourself, just lace him up against the Gamecocks, baby. You'll be in the record.
Well, against that Travaris Robinson defense, we see what's going on at Miami right now. They're getting boat raced by everybody.
Yeah. All right, what's coming up on Locked On The Gamecocks this week?
Well, we'll have our town hall tonight. Can't wait to see, a lot of guys that were at Williams-Brice and at the Loose Cockaboose with us on Saturday. Tomorrow we'll, have our coordinators, quick hitters show on Wednesday. Hopefully, we got Ben Portnoy and Colin Taylor on Thursday and Friday. Obviously a lot of talk about football, some, recruiting. Gamecocks had a big visit weekend, and clearly, if you were an offensive player in the stands, if you were a quarterback, a wide receiver, an offensive lineman, you are needed at South Carolina. And then, if you're a defensive player, who wouldn't want to play for Clayton White?
No kidding.
That dude randomly drops NBA references at every press conference. You gotta love that guy. If you're Shane Beamer, if the defense keeps playing like this, look, this guy's a rising star.
Yeah.
South Carolina, you better protect what you got on that defensive staff.
Yep. Yeah. There's going to be some people calling in the offseason, starting with Clayton White. There's no question about that. Keith, will let you run on that note so we can get it wrapped up around here. But as always, thank you. I hope that next Tuesday we're able to talk about a win.
Well, we better. Or it could be like, if you don't win next week, then you're going Richard Bell, Chad Morris type territory in year one. You don't want that.
Yeah, no. We don't need that around here. Certainly. Thank you, Keith.
Have a great week, guys.
Thank you, Keith Allsep, host of the Locked On The Gamecocks podcast. I feel like I heard a vacuum cleaner.
I don't know what that was there at the end. Yeah, I don't know what that was.
That's okay.
We were getting a little feedback on his end. That's all right.
We're out of time. I might order DB's cheesesteaks tonight.
Oh, does sound good.
We ordered last week. I got the buffalo chicken.
I'm
it was
shocked.
fantastic. It was really good. Thanks to Keith and Mike. Tomorrow, J.C. Sherbert, 12:30.
Keith messaged in the private chat. It was the house cleaner. So we were close. Yeah, it could have been the vacuum.
Let that lady know what 2 o'clock yet. Thanks to Darren. Thanks to all of you. JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice, returns tomorrow at noon. And we'll see you then.